it's Oa and welcome back to my channel for another video.
You fill my head with roses, I can't help but dream away, standing on a field with you and flowers everywhere.
And today I'm going to be doing a story time on what happened when I got my lumbar puncture done back in December of 2022. And if you want the complete backstory of everything that happened before that and why I got the lumbar puncture done, then I would highly suggest you go watch part 1 of this video, which is all of the backstory and leading up to having the lumbar puncture done. So go watch that one first so you have a little bit more context for this video. And this video is going to be specifically about what happened when I had the lumbar puncture and everything that went downhill from there, because everything that could go wrong went wrong with all of this process. So I vlogged the entire thing, but I think it was kind of all over the place and I kept forgetting to give information and everything was so confused. I wanted to have a complete video and sit down now that it's been a month since everything happened, to collect my thoughts and tell the whole story a little bit more properly and to have it make a lot more sense. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video. It always helps my channel out. And without further ado, let's jump straight into this story time. So everything started on the 20th of December, which was the date that was set for my lumbar puncture, and I had my appointment at 10:30 in the morning and I had to be at my hospital by that time. So I just got ready in the morning and then my mom and my dad came with me to the hospital as moral support because I have PTSD from the last lumbar puncture that I got. Also, for anyone who may not know this, a lumbar puncture is the same thing as a spinal tap, if you have ever heard that term before. And it's basically a huge needle that goes into in between the space in between two vertebrae, and it just goes in, and it's made to take out a little bit of the liquid of the spinal fluid. It can be used as a diagnostic tool to help with intracranial hypertension, what we thought I had at that time, and just in general for anyone who needs it for, like, if they have an infection. There's a million reasons to get one, honestly. But yeah, so just because I'm gonna be talking a lot about this, so you know kind of what it is. So I arrived at the hospital and then it got taken into a room, which I was really lucky. I was alone in the room that day, and a nurse went through the procedure with me, how everything was going to go, and then we had a blood work to be done. And my veins are impossible to poke, we know that, it's been a known fact forever. And they tried to put hot compress on my arm and I had the biggest allergic reaction I have ever had. For anyone who's new to my channel, I have heat urticaria. I also have FND, chronic migraines. I have a bunch of things. But yeah, so I had a massive allergic reaction and they couldn't see my veins anymore, so they had to like stop looking for veins because they couldn't see them. And that's when they got the call that I could go down for the lumbar puncture. We specifically asked for the lumbar puncture to be done in radiology with radiology control, because the last one I had that went so bad was done in my hospital bed when I was 9. Well, I was a month shy from being 10, but it was done in my bed horribly badly, and this time we wanted to make sure that it was done right, so it was done under radiology. I'm sorry, I'm kind of out of breath. I've been struggling with my lungs for a little bit, and talking a lot makes it go out of control, so I'm really sorry if I'm out of breath throughout all of this. But basically I went in around 11, and then we saw 2 of the radiologists. I don't know what they are, like what kind of field it is, but we saw 2 people, and they are the one who did the lumbar puncture, and we had a talk. And one thing we said is that I am currently getting evaluated for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder, and it can cause a lot of issues. But we told that to the guy who did the lumbar puncture, and he said look out for any symptoms after the lumbar puncture, because people with Ehlers-Danlos are more likely to have complications, and the hole that the needle goes into the back doesn't close basically. So like we knew that I could have higher risk from doing that, and then I went in. The puncture went fantastically well. I was super surprised. No pain, nothing. It was really great, and honestly, like, yeah, nothing like I remembered it. So I know that mistakes were made last time, definitely, because it was horrible last time and really great this time. They used a tool to measure the pressure of the liquid, and I was diagnosed with intracranial hypertension, which is what we thought I had, so it was confirmed. And then when the puncture was done and I had to transfer back onto my hospital bed to be back to my room, I was paralyzed from head to toe. For anyone who doesn't know, I have FND, which stands for functional neurological disorder, and one of the symptoms is paralysis. Both of my legs are paralyzed. At that time, my left arm was paralyzed as well. You will find more about all of that later on in the story, but yeah, so usually when there's attacks on the body, my body reacts really badly, and usually in the form of paralysis. It happened after a vaccine before. It happened just when I have really bad migraines, like a bunch of things, so we weren't surprised. So I went back to my room fully paralyzed, and then I was transferred back to another unit for the blood work because they needed an ultrasound to find my veins. So I went in for the blood work, and then I was back into my room. I was kind of transferred all over the place. And then by that point I saw a doctor, the neurologist, on the floor, and she actually had no idea of anything about FND, so that was kind of weird, but also she was willing to learn and actually listen to what I had to say. So she was not saying like, I'm the doctor, I know best. She actually listened to me, which was very new to me. And she said like, if by 5 p.m, which by that time it was like midday, it was like, yeah, I think noon or something. She said if by 5 p.m. you can move, then you can go home. If you can't, then we'll have to admit you. and by that point I was completely exhausted, so I decided to have a nap. And that's when things kind of took a turn for the worst, because while I was having a nap, I felt weird. I started having my eyes going all crazy. My eyelids would open and I could see, but I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything. And I will insert the video because of my parents. It happened, and then I fell back asleep, and then it happened again, and then I fell back asleep, and then it happened a third time. And my parents were in the room, but because I was sleeping, they were not looking at me, they were just talking, and they couldn't see me. The third time they saw me and they actually recorded it before waking me up. And we showed the video, we called a nurse, we showed them the video. I had a massive panic attack because I couldn't physically wake up to tell them that I wasn't okay. And in the back of my mind, I was like, that was a seizure. I kind of knew what it could have been because FND has non-epileptic seizures as a symptom, but also like I never had a seizure in my life, so I didn't know what it was, but I had that in the back of my mind. And the neurologist came back and saw me, and they said, like, you're staying overnight. First of all, it was like 4 p.m. by that time. I couldn't not move, and they were a little worried, but not too much. They were like, yeah, it can happen with lumbar punctures that the brain does weird things. Don't worry about it, just you stay here. And that was it. And then my mom spent the night with me in the hospital because I couldn't move and I couldn't call for help if I needed any during the night. And because I have already been in the hospital, paralyzed from head to toe, unable to call for help, I didn't want to live through that again. So my mom was so nice and stayed with me. That night we had like a little slumber party in the room. It was just trying to make it more fun, I guess. The next morning was the 21st, and I woke up and I could move a little bit my head, and yeah, kind of like mostly just move my head, kind of lifted a little bit. So the paralysis was getting better, and then like all throughout the morning it kept getting better and better. And then around 10:30ish I fell asleep and I had a nap, and I had another seizure, which now we know it was a seizure, but I had one and it was 10 times worse than all the other ones, like the other one that I had. My mom tried to wake me up, she couldn't wake me up. She called for help, but she didn't know how to call for an emergency, so she called and it took super long for a nurse to come in, and then she had to come get another one, and then they called the emergency, and then suddenly like 5 people rushed in and tried to wake me up, and it was surreal, like the entire thing. And I was so stressed out because I could not wake up, and that was horrible. But I did finally wake up, and that's when the doctor said, like, you're getting an EEG to check my brain activity, and it was scheduled for 2 p.m. and by that time, in between that seizure and the EEG, I pretty much got all of my mobility back and my second hand. Well, when I was trying to move again, I just had a feeling that my left arm was going to move, and I told my mom, like, it was under the cover, and I told my mom, like, get it out, and like I could move my fingers, and it was surreal. And then like all the paralysis got better. It was really weird, but nothing happened for my legs. But yeah, so that was a big surprise. The doctors didn't understand anything at that point, like they were lost. But they said like if your EEG comes back clear, then you can just go home, because I was moving. And then obviously they found epilepsy. I wouldn't have been able to go home, but I went in, and as soon as we started the test, like the first part, you just have to lay there and kind of like have a nap. And I was being very close to having an episode again. And then the second half of the test was the stroboscopic lights, like flashing lights, and I was out. I had another one, so it was able to record it, and I was diagnosed with non-epileptic seizures, which was scary, but I was able to go back home. And then that was like the good news, and I was given medication to lower my intracranial pressure, to not have it go back up basically after the puncture, and I was on my merry way. We left the hospital, it was about 5 p.m. and I started having a headache, like a horrible headache, on the way home, and it like just started, and like it got worse throughout the night. And like I know we had like dinner at about 8 p.m. and then after dinner, like the pain was at 10. I couldn't see anymore. I was barely even conscious, and I just like, I need to go to bed, because I thought it was a migraine that was getting worse. And I just like went to bed and passed out for the night. And that was only the start, because the next day I woke up feeling better. By that point it was the 22nd, and I was feeling better the next morning. So I was like, oh, it was just because I came back home, I did too much on one day. But I was determined to make the best out of my day and to have a normal day. And I just sat down at my computer all day trying to edit a video, and I was dying. Like the headache was getting worse, and nothing I could do could help. I took a bunch of pain medication, nothing worked. And it was exactly like the day before. Like by the end of the afternoon, I was laying like flat on my desk, barely even able to like hold a conversation, anything. Like I was out of it. And then by the end of the night, I just had to go to bed. And my mom did some googling, and she found that there's like post lumbar puncture headaches, and that you basically have to lay down to help. So that night I just lay down in bed for a little bit, and that's when we found out that laying down actually helped the headaches. So I went to bed that night, and then I woke up at like 3 a.m. and I could not move because of how much pain I was in, like my neck, and I couldn't, like the slightest head movement, I had like shooting pains, and it was awful. And like I called my parents because I needed to go to the bathroom, and like I was crying. I was a mess from how much pain I was in, and basically I knocked out from the pain. So I went back to sleep, and the next morning is when I just had 10 out of 10 pain non-stop. Nothing would help except laying down flat on my bed. I did find out that with I have one of those desks that goes on the bed, that if I had that, I could put my computer, if I had some help, and like play from laying down The Sims. So I did that. by that point. Like, I did that Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday morning is when we started getting really concerned, because painkillers didn't help, and it was the 4th day post lumbar puncture, and we were told that, well, Google said that if it lasted more than 4 days to contact the hospital. So we called because that night it was the 24th, and my dad's family was coming over to celebrate Christmas, but we had to know if I had to be rushed to the ER or not to know where we were going to do Christmas. So my dad called, and they basically just wanted to give me a bunch of pain meds, because for them it's only after day 6 that you have to be concerned. So we decided not to go to the hospital and just to get through Christmas, because the next day I had to go to my grandma's house and I really wanted to go. I just pushed through it, which I don't know if it was a good thing or not, but I pushed through it. I stayed in bed, I was patient. I cried a lot, I was a mess. I just couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't do anything. So it was hard, and I was like a shadow of myself. Honestly, I wasn't myself at all. And so Christmas Eve went well with my family. I just stayed in bed and they came to say hi to me in my bed. And then the next day it was Christmas and I had to go to my grandma's house, and my grandma's house is basically like 5 minutes down the road, and they didn't let me any choice and I had to go there. They just put me in my wheelchair and wheeled me there, but I was hysterical. The level of pain I was in, I would say 100 out of 10. I was barely even conscious. It was horrible. I do not wish this on anyone. It was the worst I have ever been. And they basically just wheeled me to my grandma's house, put me in my childhood bed, and I spent the entire day in that bed. That was my Christmas. It was horrible. I hated it, and I swore that day that I would never do something like that again. If I am sick, I do not attend family function anymore. I don't care what it is. And then I agreed that night that something was seriously wrong, and it was not getting better, it was getting worse. So Monday morning on the 26th, bright and early, when I woke up and I wasn't feeling better, it was day 6, so we could call the hospital again. My dad called the ER and they said like, come immediately. So I didn't unpack my bags from the last stay, so we just packed everything in the car. I passed out unconscious in the car because it's 40 minutes and I was dying. And like the pain was getting worse. Like laying down was fine, the second I was sitting up it was hell. So car ride was hell. I was unconscious in the car and then I had to sit in the waiting room. I was miserable. It was hell on earth. Like I regretted going to the ER. And I was placed into a room rather quickly, I would say. And like 5 minutes later, the neurologist was there for my consultation and to evaluate me. And because it is so characteristic, I was diagnosed in like 5 minutes with post-lumbar puncture syndrome, which is when there is a spinal fluid leak, which is exactly what the radiologist had warned us about, that I was more prone to have. And that meant that basically when they did the lumbar puncture, I had intracranial hypertension. They lowered the pressure to be in a normal range, and then I kept leaking and leaking and leaking and going down. And then there's something about the position, like when you lay from laying down to sitting up, where like the way the fluid travels in the body, that like inflammates the brain tissues and stuff, and it's horrible, honestly. And basically what they said is that I needed a blood patch, like when I was in the ER. So that day I was admitted, 1 for better pain management, 2 for being laying down flat all day long, and 3 for a potential blood patch, which I didn't end up having because a side effect from blood patch is intracranial hypertension. A blood patch is basically when they take your own blood and they inject it in the place where they did the puncture, and when the blood coagulates, it blocks the hole and closes it so it stops leaking. Or if you lay down flat long enough, it can heal on its own. And basically, like every single day for that week, the doctors came in every morning to evaluate how I was feeling, decide whether or not I needed the blood patch, but they didn't want me to have the blood patch, even though it would have been like a miracle cure. And in the end, I stayed in the hospital until Thursday, when the headache got good enough to go home. Basically, they said if the pain was at a 2 or a 3, it would continue to go down at home. So I was discharged. Very happy to be discharged, very scared also because I was still in bed rest when I came home on the 29th of December. Basically ever since, knowing that today is, what day is it today? Today is the 18th of January, and for like less than a week I have been able to sit up for more than a few hours without laying down for a while. So basically a month on bed rest and feeling horrible and not having a good time at all. It's been hell. I do have my next doctor's appointment to check on everything. I have one in February for a neuro-ophthalmologist to see my eyes, because the reason why they thought of the intracranial hypertension was because I had edemas behind my optical nerves, compressing them, which is an accumulation of liquid due to intracranial hypertension. And basically, like, they want to see how my eyes are doing, if I have any permanent damage or not. And then I have another control with my neurologist to see how I'm doing in March. So I will obviously continue to take you through this crazy journey with me. But I hope you enjoyed this video. But I hope I was able to explain all of this mess good enough, I guess. It was insanely crazy and I did not anticipate anything to go this way, but I hope you enjoyed. If you want to see more, definitely subscribe for more. You can check out others of my story times on my playlist on my channel, or check out all of my other socials for more daily updates. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!